Today we had a service call on an exhaust fan at a restaurant. It's not working. Oh, that's funny. Look at the fan just started running. That's funny. The manager laid it on the ground because the fan wasn't working. And I just came up here right now and it wasn't running and then it just started. That just makes me laugh. All right, well, I'm gonna dive into it, put the fan back on there and see what's going on. So I am back today, and this is the one where we had the electrical short and the wiring was all a mess and the exhaust fan was laying on the ground. So came back out and we lifted a new exhaust fan up here. We had a crane out this morning, lifted the fan up, and for liability reasons, I can't really show the crane work, but because I don't need every little person nitpicking how we're doing things and what's not correct and all that good stuff. So anyways, we have a new fan up here. When we go back in with our fans, we put a super hinge on them, okay? That's this hinge kit. It's made by a company called Omni Containment. I have no affiliation with them. We just love these hinges. They last forever. They're amazing. This is the new design, and the new design, you don't even have to drill through the curb. It literally just pinches it. So these go through and they pinch against it. And then you just drill these down in, and it's an awesome, awesome hinge setup. We put those, basically, we've replaced this fan, we put them on that one, and we've replaced that fan. So they are awesome hinges. I highly suggest it. They prevent stuff like this. You see this fan right here is buckling, and that's because the crappy hinge that they come with ruins the fans. Look at that. So this will be our last fan, well, one of the last ones we have to change here. So when you put the super hinge on there, you can basically one-handed lift up the fan and it stops on the other end. Nice and secure. You see that this goes underneath it. They're awesome. I highly suggest if you guys change fans that you look up this company, Omni Containment, and check out their super hinges. They're totally worth it. So that's kind of something we sell to the customer whenever we do these exhaust fan installs. So one-handed, you can do it, super easy. All right, so we've got a fan in here. They come unassembled, so I had to put the motor in. I had to set the pulley, had to put the switch in. I moved the switch up to this L bracket right here instead of mounting it down on the ground. They come with this little MX connector. I'm not a fan of that, but you know, I didn't quote to add anything else. So we bring new conduit in. I used the existing wiring because there was nothing wrong with it coming up. I actually shortened the conduit. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this bad boy on. And we're allowed to run 4.7 amps. And so we're just gonna check the amps right up in here. Basically we're at 4.3. When I close the pulley down 1/2 turn more, I go to 4.8. So this is as high as I can do it without changing pulleys. Actually though, you don't wanna set the pulleys based off of amp draw. You just wanna make sure that they're not over amping. Now, I set this one to the identical setting that the old pulley was set at. You have to do that because of the building balance. Remember, we don't ever adjust these pulleys to tighten a belt or sheaves, whatever you want to call them, okay? The adjustment on the sheave or the pulley is for the speed of the exhaust fan. It is not to tighten or loosen the belt, okay? I need to make that clear. You never adjust them to tighten a belt. You pull on the tension of the motor, basically. So you loosen this and then the next one, and you pull that out and you tighten them down to adjust the tension on the motor. Whenever you're doing startup on these fans too, you always want to double check their tightness of the sheaves just to make sure, and I did. So we're good. Everything's looking straight. I'm going to go ahead and make this connection. I usually do amp checks right here because a lot of times there's slack in the wire, and I can just go ahead and, you know, loosen it or tighten it. So I'll tighten that up. We've got no need to support the conduit because it's, you know, I basically made it as short as possible. You got to make sure that the conduit's the right length, so that way when you're opening or closing or hinging the fans, it doesn't impede on the hinge. Now luckily when I hinge this one, it's hinging this way, so the conduit, so the length is needed for when it sets down flat. So I basically just make it as short as possible to try to prevent drooping. Yeah, so we're good to go. This fan is good. It's set to the exact same setting. That fan is identical. The wheel, the pulleys, and everything are identical to the old fan. Now, if the new fan had different pulleys or sheaves on it, or if the wheel was a different size, we would need to do airflow tests, okay? If it's just a matter of pulleys, what you can do is you can use a tachometer, and you can basically check the RPM on the driven shaft to see how fast it's spinning, and you can set the RPM on the driven shaft to whatever the old one was at if it was running, okay? In this case, I didn't need to use a tachometer. I just basically set the pulley back to where the old one was because it was identical, and the wheel size on the fan is identical too. So that's pretty much it, guys. So to finalize this exhaust fan install, we're going to go ahead and replace this contactor with a traditional motor starter like this one right here. Someone had disconnected the overload section before, so I've got everything turned off. I've got control voltage and main power turned off, and I've verified that. So we're safe. I'm going to go ahead and get this guy replaced. I've got the new one right here. We'll get it put together, and then I'll show you what we got. All right, so we have the new starter put in. I set the amps for what I think it should be. I'm going to go up and verify the motor's run load. It's all wired in. We have them wired so that way if one starter trips, it only trips that starter. It doesn't trip everything. So just want to verify the fan rotation. It's correct. There's also an indicator down in there telling us. It looks like we're allowed to run 4.7 amps. So I usually go 10% over that. So 0.47. So 4.7. So what is that? 5 and some change. I'll do the math in a minute. But yeah, we're good. Put the cover back on and set the correct amperage on the overload. All right. 4.7 plus 0.47 is 5.17. I've got it set for just past the 5, but not quite to 5.5. You know, if you follow, there's a couple different methods of setting overcurrent protection, and usually I've read a lot where people want you to use the safety factor or the SFA on the motor. I like to go 10%. It's probably a little low, but I like to err on the side of caution. You need to pay attention to the manufacturer's equipment that you're working on. Different stuff requires different amperage settings. If you're working on critical equipment,